Hi, I'm Amy Redman, and I'm so glad you've joined me to paint today. You're in for a great experience. Now, I want to let you know that I'll be painting at my pace, and that may not necessarily be your pace. So, the beauty of video is that you can push pause and catch up as you need to. You can also rewind and review a concept or a step that we've just gone over. There will also be drawing breaks, and that's a good time to catch up as well. Also, today's painting is really just inspiration, and it's my chance to guide you toward your own masterpiece. So I want you to create something that really speaks to you and make it your own in any way that you'd like to, whether it's just change a couple of colors or maybe add something else to the painting. Now, the most important thing here is to have fun. So, on that note, I'm going to suggest that you go throw on some of your favorite music, grab a refreshment, and let's get started. Cheers! Hi, and welcome. We're going to be painting a single lone tree on a hillside under a sunset sky. And of course, these sunset skies can take on any colors and any forms that you would like. So this is going to be just a lot of fun and really a fairly simple painting to do. So all we need to do to start is to draw a bit of a line to create our hillside. So I think I'm just going to, I don't want it to be too perfectly centered. I think I want it to be maybe a little bit over here like this. So that's just what I'm going to do, and I can always change that up if I decide to. So, the more I think about it, I don't know about that sky coming all the way down here, so I can go ahead and maybe kind of slope that out. But I'll just play with that with the paint a little bit more so you can see. You can kind of play with this shape a little bit and not worry about these extra pencil lines, because the paint will cover that up. So let's get started, because this is a fairly dark area and that's going to need 2 coats to really cover that. Let's get started with that first, and we'll get that going, and then we'll play with our sky a bit. Then we can come back, add another coat to this, and then we can put in our tree. Okay? So we're going to start out. I've got every color on there, and that's all listed on your on the page for the video. And I'm going to start out by using some brown, that's the raw umber, and some green, as well as some of that darker ultramarine blue. And I'm going to get some of these colors, kind of getting like a darker green here, sort of an alligator green, onto the canvas there, onto my hillside. And I like using a diagonal line just because that kind of indicates some upward motion, but not tall like a skyscraper. So that's a nice brush stroke for a hillside. And we'll continue doing that. And whenever you get to an edge that you want to keep fairly crisp, just go ahead and lay your brush on and slide it along. And that's going to maintain a fairly crisp line, as opposed to jabbing at it with your paintbrush and creating a little bit of a jagged line. So, just gonna keep going here and fill this in. And this first layer is not going to give you the kind of coverage that you want, which is why I said we're gonna need to do a second layer. So as you can see, there are brush marks that keep showing up, and every time you try to, cover one, you end up actually creating another one. So don't worry about those things. Just get a nice layer of paint on here, not too thick. If you make it too thick, it just means it's going to have to dry a lot longer. So all you need is just one nice coat on here, and then once that thoroughly dries, which takes maybe 20 minutes, that's going to be ready for a second coat. You do have to let that dry thoroughly, so you don't want to try to start painting on it before it's nice and dry, because you can start actually picking up pieces of paint and it will reveal the canvas and not cover up real well after that. So resist the urge to keep painting over it, and if it gets feeling a little sticky, just stop what you're doing and know that you'll be going over it again when it's dry. So we're getting this kind of silhouetted hillside in here, but I'm adding that bit of the blue to the green and the brown. And that just keeps a little energy in our painting. I like to always mix the colors up. And you can see that I was loading my brush up with several colors at a time, and I'm just letting those mix and mingle on the canvas. So you don't really want to, mix a color on your plate and then apply it, because then it just goes on really flat and there's not a lot of life and energy to it. So I recommend loading the brush the way that I'm doing it here, or at least give it a try and see how you feel about it. So while we're doing this, we want to also get our side edges. So I'm going to do this side over here. And this way, if you decide that you don't want to frame your painting, you still can hang this on the wall and it will have a nice finished look to it. And I'll go ahead and get this other side as best I can, but I'll double check it on a drying break and make sure I've got that well covered as well. All right. And that's all there is to it. So we've already got our hillside mapped out. And I'm going to go ahead and wash this brush now, and we'll move on to our sunset sky. So if you need a little extra time, just push pause. So remember that when you wash out your brush, you want to make sure that it really gets dug down there and get it against the bottom of your water cup, and that way then it'll open up the bristles and release all of that paint from your brush. If you just swish it around on the top of the water, it's just not going to get all that paint out of there, and you don't want this dark green going into your sky, right? So for our sky, again, like I said, it can be anything at all. So if you want to go with, warmer oranges and yellows and such, you can do that. You can go into the pinks, you can go into the purples, you could do a huge variety of things for that matter. So I think what I'm going to do though is start with some white. So I'm going to pick up some of my white on my brush, and I think I'll do a little bit of my cobalt blue, because that's more of a sky blue, and very little blue compared to the white, because the blue really takes over quickly. So I'm going to add that kind of maybe more up in here. Now I have to tell you, typically I recommend using a horizontal brush stroke for the sky. But for this particular painting, I don't know, I just am feeling like I kind of want to have this sort of diagonal dramatic sunset sky effect. So that's just what I'm doing. Now if you would prefer to use a horizontal stroke, which like I said is typically what I recommend, because our eye sees the sky is something that is flat, then go ahead and do that. I added just a touch of purple with my cobalt blue there, and that'll give me some other little interesting effects starting to happen in here, and I can always add more of that. And I just keep picking up white with my colors, and I'm keeping it nice and pretty up here. Now it doesn't need to be the same all the way across, right? So I think what I'm going to do, and I'm just playing with this as I go a little bit, that's the fun of this, is I'm going to do some white with just a pinpoint of red to create some pinks in the sky. And I think I'll just add a little bit of that in there too. You could use strokes like this, you could, and that's going to keep it a little bit softer. But you could also maybe do I'm going to do a little bit of purple and red together with just a little bit of white. And let me just show you another thing that you could do. You could use kind of little dabs, little dashy lines, and create a much more, fun mingled kind of a sky too. So play with this and have some fun. I'm going to do the same thing. I might add some, keep it kind of purpley and pink up in these areas, and maybe I'll start to have it fade out and stay more blue over here. So like I said, think in terms of that the sky just keeps changing and it's just fun to work with in terms of colors. There's no have-tos on color in a sunset sky. So I'm just kind of dabbing along now and just liking what's happening. So I'm going to leave it alone a little bit there. I'm going to wash out my brush. And one other thing is actually go ahead and do your top and your side edges while you go as well. I didn't do that while I had that color on there, but I'll have to go back and do that. But While you've got your color on there, it's a good idea to do that as you go. And that way then everything builds at the same rate, and you can, as you change things, you're changing the sides with it. And that way then you get this nice continuous feeling to your painting, and it won't look like, things changed midstream on the sides, and instead it'll just all develop at the same time, okay? So let's take a little bit more white, and maybe I'll tap into these yellow and orangey yellows here, the deep yellow. And with those, they'll take over the white really quickly as well, so be careful with those not to pick up too much, or it's going to just be this like super, super bright sky. You can see that I didn't have too much yellow on there, and yet it's, it's got some color there. So I'm going to allow this to kind of go up into what I've done a little bit. It may, with yellow and blues, it may create a touch of green, but I'm just doing a little bit, and where it seems like it's already drying a bit, so it's not combining too much. So I think I'm just going to have some fun with that. And get just a little bit more to get right along my hillside. So you can see how that tree then here is going to be silhouetted really nicely against these lighter colors. So it's as if the sun has just set and is no longer visible. If you want to add a sun in, you certainly can. But I think I'm going to keep mine kind of a after the sunset sort of a feel. And I'm using my brush along this line because this is still, it's not wet, so it's not really going to pick up that deep green, but I want to resist digging right into it and having it go in there. So as I get along this edge, I'm going to show you again here. I've got a little bit of paint on there, and I'm setting it on the edge of my hill and then sweeping out. Now I don't mind if a little bit of the yellow goes into my hill, right? I just don't want to pull any of that dark green into my sky. So by like laying it on the edge there, you can kind of pull it up, and if you've got just a touch of white space in between, go ahead and leave it. Don't worry about that, because what you can do is just enlarge your hill that slight bit and cover it up when we do that second layer. So I think I've got some things happening that I like. I'm keeping it kind of sweepy and, like I said, sort of dabby and such. So I think I like that, but I'm going to add just a little hint more orange. So I'm going to do some of my orange with my orangey yellow now. And I think I'll use those without the white. And maybe just add a little hint of it into this wet area here of the yellow, so that I get just a little hint of it. Just where it changes from yellow to my blues and purples. And I could add a little bit in here once in a while. Doesn't have to all be separate. So you can see that that's very pretty as well. This is starting to dry a little bit, so I'm getting just that little hint of stickiness. And so I want to be a little bit careful with this. So I'm going to just do a little bit with a very light, sweepy touch. And I think I'm just going to let that be and leave it alone. Maybe come down in here, and even though I picked up a little bit of blue on my brush when I was up here, it's okay. I kind of like that. If you find that you start to get real muddy colors, because that can happen when you start to mix these cool and warm colors together, if you've done just a little bit too much mixing, just leave it alone, let it dry thoroughly, and when it's really nice and dry, like bone dry to the touch, then you can take your colors and you can try it again. And that's the beauty of acrylic. It's a very forgiving paint. So it allows you to keep trying and to keep playing with it. So again, as you move through your sky, make sure that you're doing your edges as well. It's difficult for me to really reach the edge, and so I'm just going to do that on the drying break, which we're going to take right now. We're going to let our entire painting dry thoroughly, like I said, to the touch. If you want to expedite things, you can always use a hair dryer and put that on like a low heat setting, and let that kind of help dry that up a little bit faster if you'd like. And we'll be back in a few minutes with a nice dry painting to move forward on. We're back now with a nice dry canvas. And so again, I should be able to go like this and there's no stickiness. I'm not going to have any paint come off on me. And I could change this up and make it very, very green. I could make it any color I wanted to at this point because that's what acrylic will do, is it will actually allow you to kind of start fresh. Now granted, a dark background like this, if you're trying to really lighten it up a lot, you're going to need to add just a touch of white. White kind of acts as a blocker. So at this point, like I said, I want this to stay quite dark, but maybe not quite this dark. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on my greens. I've got my large brush again, nice and washed out. And I'm going to still use a little bit of brown and blue with it, but I'm going to use mainly just the green there. And I'm going to go ahead and allow those colors to once again mix and mingle on there. Do you see how nicely it covers that first layer of paint now? If you have any spots like right there, I can tell that I kind of evened out that line and therefore it has like a first layer appearance. So just be aware that I'm just going to let that dry a little bit and I should be able to go over it again kind of at the end of doing this, and I should probably be able to get that to richen up. So just if you do end up creating new borders, if you will, then just be aware that they may need another layer and you just want to let that dry a bit before you go at it. Otherwise you're just going to be fighting a losing battle. The paint always wins, you know? So I'm going to keep going like this, and you look and see what you like. If you want a whole different color, if you want, you know, a bit of golden color in there, you can certainly do that. That's completely up to you. But I'm going to go with this kind of deep green, kind of shadowy hillside because the light from the sun is not illuminating it anymore. So I'm going to go along my edge here, and then I'm going to bring my brush strokes back down into this diagonal way. Use that diagonal direction. And again, focusing more on the green this time. And as I get closer up here, because this is kind of indicating that it's a little bit closer to me, I could even make it just a little bit more green if I want to, but you really don't need to. This is sort of whimsical feeling, so I'm not worried about all these little realities. And you can use the real small dashy marks, you can use the longer brush strokes. Again, try them out, see what you like, and then go with that. I'm doing kind of a combination of brush strokes myself. Now I got just a little bit of dried paint there. I can see it on there. I'm going to pull it off with my brush. I could pull it off with my fingertip as well. I'm going to get rid of that right now because once it dries on there, it stays on there as texture. So if you run into that, just be aware of that as well. And I think I've about got it here. And don't forget your side edges. Get those as well. And that bottom underneath edge, that's something that you're going to want to touch up as well, but just you can go ahead and do that on your time. And already that allowed me to kind of touch that up and give it a little more finish there. Whoops. So I like that there's kind of a mingling of our colors there. It's not just one flat color. And it just, again, it kind of reflects the fact that light kind of dapples on a hillside. Even though it's quite dark now and we're getting that silhouetted feeling, it's still dappling a little bit and it's kind of bringing out, you know, the blue tones and the dark brown tones, but there's still quite a bit of green as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave that large brush alone now. And I'm going to instead at this point go with my small round brush. And we'll give that a good drying off as well. And I recommend drying it all the way up, like halfway up your handle where it sits in the water, because otherwise with a small brush, it's a very small area that the water works its way down. And all of a sudden, just as you're carefully trying to do something, a big pool of water can spill out on you. So just dry it halfway up your handle and you should be good. I'm going to take a little bit of my black and brown, kind of where it's seeping together. And I'm going to use some purple, I think. But you could use the dark blue. Maybe I'll do a little dark blue on there too. Just adding some colors there. And I'm going to just start to create the structure of my tree. So I'm going to just do kind of like one little diagonal line there, and maybe another one kind of in there, and just starting to kind of bring this up. So I'm going to start with sort of a nice V there, okay? Then you could start to sweep out and create the branches a little bit. And notice that I'm just giving kind of a suggestion of the branches. I'm not needing to put every little branch in. It's just kind of forming a little skeletal structure for my tree. And I've kept it nice and dark so that it has that nice silhouette there. All right. Now I'm going to put that one back in, and I'm going to go to my medium flat brush. And I can dry that one off. And this time I'll use the same colors, but I'm going to be using a stippling sort of a effect. So basically I'm just going to be dabbing at the canvas with the tip of my brush there. So I'm going to do again some brown, a little black. Black really takes over quickly. I want this to still have a little energy, which is why I added in that blue and purple. So a little black goes a long, long way. So I'm going to add a little on there, and now I'm going to tap it off a little bit on the edge of my plate because I want there to be just the slightest bit of laciness to it. I don't want it to be just really, really dark and solid, let's say. So I'm going to now do that little tapping motion. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that paint, tap it off on my plate, and then go back at it again. And you see how this is now giving me sort of the texture of this tree. And it's allowing me to see through a little bit, and that's what that beautiful silhouette is about. So pick up a little bit more of these. Again, tap them off on my plate a bit. And I'll do a little bit more. And you form your tree however you'd like to. I like to twist my brush around a little bit here and there. And don't make the outside too perfect. You want it to have that, rough foliage sort of a feel to it. And maybe a few little wayward branches there, but you want to work, go slow and work fairly confidently here, because once you put that on, if you don't like what you see, you will need to let it dry thoroughly and just paint your sunset sky right over it again, let that dry, and then go back to your tree. So you can always try it again if you don't like it, but just go slow and careful and keep evaluating if you like the shape of it, if you're allowing enough of your sunset to kind of shine through all of that foliage. But basically, I think we've got it. It's a beautiful painting, and see how simple that was. So I hope you've enjoyed the journey with me today, and I hope that you'll paint with me again soon. Thanks so much.